Welcome to the Pat Life Podcast. As always, I am Patrick, and today we have a special guest. This is a gentleman that I've known his work for a while, but I never really dove in crazy deep. I heard him on Alpha Vedic. I heard him on a couple other podcasts, and it's definitely in a field that I think is all pertinent to our lives. And the information that our guest here is going to share is critical and very important for us because, as I said, what we're going to be talking about, it's around us all the time, and it's just not saying you have to worry about it and be in fear, but know that it is there and that there is solutions to that. That's the biggest thing, and I'll let our guest dive a little bit more into it. But today with us is Matt Landman. What's up, man?
Hello, Patrick. I have one brother, and that's his name. And thank you so much for having me on. And yes, of what you said of not subscribing to fear, that's the most important aspect of anything really nowadays. Like truth is this, it's a vibration and frequency, and there's all these sort of things on there, like people and ideas and all sorts of things. But fear is not on there. So I think that's kind of this reckoning that we're all coming through right now, is abandoning all these programs. And yes, thank you. I appreciate
Of
it.
course, man.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And yeah, as you know, and many of us know, in trying to figure out what's going on in this world, how it works, and what people may or may not be doing to try to keep us from understanding our potential, it can be what we're about to talk about in regards to EMFs, EMPs, and everything else that you may want to discuss and break down. For those listening, it could be very scary, first off, because they're going, wait, what's happening? So that's why I wanted to make that clear. And I know you make that clear in conversations. And it is an important topic, and it is serious. However, there is solutions, and that's what it sounds like you've made your life's mission with your business and everything else that you're doing to make that available to people. So on that, I figured let's just dive into, who you are, what it is that we're here to talk about today, and why it's so important to you. And we can kind of just steer it from there.
Awesome. Yeah. So, hi, I'm Matt Landman. I never thought I'd become an activist, but it's been kind of, I guess, my destiny, like a spiritual kind of journey. And here I am, about 10 years after deciding to dive into it. I've actually made a business and made a documentary film titled Franken Skies about weather engineering and geoengineering. And I made an EMF protection clothing line, and I've done a lot of summits and conferences on geoengineering, or anti-geoengineering rather. And it's been an amazing journey. I grew up in Virginia and ended up on the West Coast. I wish I could be where you're at. Which island are you on?
Oh, wow.
Cool. Well, that's where the big city is, right? So, yeah. So check. Yeah, cool. Of course, and check it out. So, I'm so blessed, brother. Like, it's been a journey, and I'm 42 now, but I never, in my wildest imagination, thought that I could have my crazy scattered brain and have like an employee. Right now it's January 22nd at 12:12 p.m. for me, so it's 1/22/12/12 2023. Anyways, I've got an employee, and I can like just have random ideas and be like, hey, can you please do this for me? Hey, can you please do this for me? And I would never be able to keep track of all my ideas. And so I'm so blessed with that. And one of the little projects she did recently and came back to me, and come to find out, the most searched for EMF protection clothing is your island in the whole world. So like the most people that go online and search EMF protection clothing is Oahu. So it's a big market, and I would like to get over there and like figure out how to market to people there, maybe even like in a brick and mortar physical store. So I created so let's back up. So first I learned about EMF, and 5G was like this buzzword. And the way that I really learned about EMF is I became sensitive to it by living next to a smart meter, like right on the other side of the wall from me, for about 6 months when I was working on my movie, Frankenskies. It came out in 2017. And if you haven't seen it, it's really worth watching. And it's very grounded. And in the end, it's inspiring with the truth. I don't like to be any, Debbie Doomsday or anything like that. Like, the truth could be it can upset you. You know, these are emotions or whatever. But at the end of the end, it's meant to set you free and put you on a higher track. So that's what I hope to do with my documentaries and my conferences and all that sort of stuff. And then also with my clothing line, which is titled Hope in Latin, which is sparrow, or I hope in Spanish, esperar is to hope in Spanish. And Sparrow, Spero, is the company, and I make silver lined clothing and accessories, all sorts of stuff, baby blankets, and you name it. So I first came out with, and it was so serendipitous and synchronized the way that it. And this is an important story, and then I'll pass it to you because it'll spawn some questions. So I was like, I'm really goal oriented, otherwise I can't get anything done, especially before I had a freaking employee, you know. And I was like, okay, by September 19th, 2019, I'm going to go on this big radio show, coast to coast, and I'm going to tell everyone about my new company. And by then, I'm going to have these certain product lines. And I had, at the time, I just had basically these foam bags. I came out with a couple hats, but nobody really cared about the hats. But these foam bags were, and the story of the foam bags is very important and pivotal, and just the timeline and everything is super important. So it was September of 2019. I started selling a whole bunch of these foam bags that are these woven silver. People don't really grasp the woven silver thing, but it's basically what the technology is micro-sized threads of nylon dipped in silver, and then you've got this like malleable silver thread that's really skinny, and then you can make with a bunch of those you can weave stuff. Whatever you want, like cloth, and then use that cloth to have men's underwear or socks or whatever. And different percentages of the silver make it less or more protective from EMF radiation. So lead works, copper works, steel works, and silver works to block this EMF fields, which is basically light, but light that we can't see. We can get into the specifics of that in a little bit if you want to ask questions or whatever it is. And it's a lot, you know, it's a lot for people that don't. It's interesting because we have our phones and Wi-Fi all around us, but we can't see it. So because we can't see it, it's just like leave it to the scientists, or leave it to someone else to think for us, because how could we be impacted by something we can't even see? But it cumulatively does impact us. It's called it's non-ionizing, meaning non-heating, but still it's radiation. It's called non-ionizing radiation that slowly accumulates in your body and can do things. So anyways, these silver foam bags that I came out with, Sparrow silver foam bags, you put your phone in and you don't get any signal. And so I like it because I don't like always being on my phone and stuff. And if I know it's in the bag, then it is turned off. If it's sitting over there on the table, like, oh, did I put it on airplane mode? I don't even know. Then I got to go and pick it up and whatever. And when I developed, I'm not as bad as I used to be, but I used to not even like holding the phone in my hand because I could feel it and whatever. But I'm not as EMF hypersensitive or whatever they call it. There's levels of it, of sensitivity. Electro hypersensitivity or whatever. So these phone bags, I came out with them and I sold a bunch and people were stoked. And you put your phone in, you don't get any signal, no tracking, nothing. It doesn't ring in there. It's just like turning the phone bag off, but not. And so you can have it next to your bed or whatever. And then come to find out, okay, so let's just be understanding that. So you get the phone bag, you put it in the silver phone bag, and the phone doesn't ring. And people got these for privacy or whatever, and it just showcases how good the silver works. So come March 2020, just like 6 months later or whatever it was, if not even, a lot of people were contacting me with theirs, especially iPhones, and they were saying, Matt, all of a sudden my phone bags don't work anymore. So they worked, meaning the phone didn't work inside, and then they stopped working. They didn't get a new phone. The phone started going through the bag, and they're asking me what's going on. Is it a faulty bag? And I didn't understand. I didn't grasp what was going on at first. So I had to troubleshoot and deal with a lot of upset customers. And finally, I learned or realized that I think that they're slowly rolling out 5G. which 4G LTE stands for. All the 4G phones now are LTE, 4G phones basically, and LTE stands for long-term evolution, LTE, and that basically stands for 5G. So, and 5G is just kind of a blanket word for a phone that is going to be really fast, but has a smaller carrier wave, which emits more radiation, but you need more towers and more infrastructure for it to work, basically. So I had to figure it out, and what I did was I made double layered foam bags, 2 layers of the same silver fabric that I already was using before. And I sent them to the customers that were upset, including, friends and whatever. And they were like, yeah, it works fine now. Thanks. It must have been like my foam got stronger. And I was like, oh, cool. Great. I guess. So I stopped making the other ones, and the other ones ended up becoming like garbage, but some people like them for their bug out bags for ham radios and little things like that, whatever. So I do still have some of them. Um, but then what was wild, Pat or Patrick, you like Pat?
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. So what was wild is later that year, later in 2020, it was the Omicron variant started to come out. Okay. And was it the next year? No, it was that year, right? Trying to get the timeline down. Maybe it was the next year when the Omicron started to come out. Yeah. So when the Omicron started to come out, those double line foam bags that I was all jazzed about, and like basically I thought it's everything in life from I've realized is like you get your ego boosted and then it gets crushed and you think you're invincible and then you're not, and it's just like back and forth.
Yep.
Even as a child, even as an adult, it's just this process, and then finally you're like, okay, I know nothing. I
Yep.
like let me just surrender to it
No,
all.
nothing.
Yeah, it's great actually, and then you start to go within, which is really neat. I've been waking up really in the middle of the night and lighting a beeswax candle and just kind of like it's another bit of the story, but it's a lot. There's a lot of the power in just like not thinking about all this and going within, because we have astral bodies and all this sort of stuff and all these things. So, anyways, the foam bags that were 2 layers of the silver fabric, they ended up not working. Um, Especially for the newer generation iPhones, and definitely not working for 5G phones, people that have 5G phones. So I was like, geez, I gotta troubleshoot again. And then based on like the size of the needle and like all the stuff, it was a pain in the butt, and I had to really figure it out. And so what we did, we made triple layer foam bags, but it was to make it really functional. It's 2 layers of silver, and then sandwiched in the middle is a layer of copper nickel, which is like really strong. And so those 3 layers and 3 metals seems like it's gonna totally work forever. I don't have that confidence that I used to have, but it seems like for sure it'll work forever. I mean, it's really strong. So you put a 5G phone in there, even if you're right next to the cell tower, can't get through. It's just super strong.
Interesting.
So that was like, wow, okay, that happened. All the while we're going through like freaking lockdowns and stuff, and people are saying, I've got, the ailment that was supposedly going around. And I'm like, oh, really, really? Well, I never got it. And my 3G phone actually just got turned off, but this is my 3G phone. I've had this for a long while, and they just removed my service, so the 3G network doesn't even work anymore. So I never had like any smartphone or anything like this. And the old phone bags totally will kill this signal. It's not that strong. But what I started to, and I would never say this on shows and stuff like that until I really felt like it was true. I firmly, firmly believe that that people, when they were getting ill and having all these symptoms like loss of hair, loss of taste buds, and all that, I mean, yeah, there might have been something going around. I'm not going to deny that, or whatever, train theory, all that sort of stuff, whatever, 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 whatever. But at the end of the day, the phones were getting cranked up so much that they were emitting so much radiation, got everybody, that people
Yeah.
were definitely getting sick from that. They're definitely getting sick from the phones, and like getting accustomed to it, because
Just
the
something
new,
to
yeah, something to.
well, I'm just saying something to consider too, right? Is if you get a lot of people with the cranking those up and at home where they're around a lot of their Wi-Fi's, a lot of their devices, staying home and just constantly having things running all day, every day, maybe more than usual, right? In a place of stress, in a place of their body just not ready to take that on, and they're constantly around it, right? Not considering that that could be a possibility. That is something, just, I always tell people, believe what you want, but something to consider when it's like, I always tell people, like, you put your hand in like a microwave or put your head in a microwave, you're probably not going to want to do that. Regardless of the heat aspect, everybody knows, well, no, that's not good for you. And it's like they'll say like, hey, the radiation's going now. Just imagine that in other devices, and we're openly using those devices, and they're getting stronger and stronger. You know what I mean? So, and I'm with you. And a lot of people have been experiencing symptoms and things that are very in line with radiation poisoning. Would you? Right. And so, let me ask a question, if you don't mind, with your devices and things like that, as people were saying, hey, your bags worked and now they're not working, were people saying that they've been having, like, feel like they're getting sick, or they're having like symptoms? Was there any sort of correlation in conversation about those when the bags were no longer working, or did they just not even bring it up?
So, I went to first I went to Virginia Tech and got a business degree, and then I went back to school way later at Cal State, Humboldt, and went to film school, and then I got a master's in business. And in the business school, the craziest class that I took every day at 8 a.m. with this like really amazing tyrant teacher was statistics. And statistics is a real science, actually. And I don't like to just say things. And corollary, yes, for sure, to answer your question, yes. But I'd go beyond correlation at this point and say causal with all the data that I've been able to accumulate. And so I've got people that I talk to like all the time. I mean, it's quite the amazing a pulse that I have on the world, because even like I work out of China, and they all just like everything took like way extra long recently, because they're all like going through some weird, they say that they've got a new variant or whatever, but it's like I've got an interesting pulse on it all. And yes, people were contacting me, even friends from like high school and college, and they were like, look, I know you're saying that it's all BS, but I got it. And I'm like, well, do you mind if I ask you questions? And they're like, yeah, sure, because of my friends, you know. I'm like, what kind of phone do you have? Well, me and my wife just switched to iPhones, like iPhone 16 or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, you didn't have iPhones before? And like, no. And I'm like, well, right when you got the iPhone, like, did you happen to have, symptoms then? He's like, well, right immediately, we did immediately lose our taste buds. And then, I'm not trying to do like an idiot voice, but either way. And then also brain fog. And I'm like, well, did you know that the service, like Verizon iPhones, different than the carrier that he had before, that they have the high band 5G? And I started explaining to him like what it even is, and it's not even like more radiation. It's like people, it makes sense, like more radiation. It's a completely different form of radiation than we've ever been exposed to ever before. So let's just talk about it for a minute, because it's pretty educational and scientific. So our eyes are a certain size, and based on the size of our eyes, we can see the light spectrum, but only Roy G. Biv, the rainbow of 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, is Roy G. Biv. That, oh yeah, G. Sorry, red, orange, yellow, G, green, blue, indigo, violet. Thanks. Yeah, exactly. So I got ahead of myself. So we can't see infrared, we can't see ultraviolet, but it's in the color spectrum. We just can't see it because of our eyes. And continuously on the infrared, I mean on the electromagnetic spectrum, are all these other light waves that we cannot see. They're literally classified as light waves. They travel at 186,000 miles per second. They are just different waveforms. The difference between infrared, or let's just say red and blue light, is the size of the light wave, and it's measured in nanometers, and it's a small differential, but that small difference changes the color. And then it even different smaller differences, and then we can't even see the light, and it is around us still, like like UV. So X-rays and EMF spectrum, the entire EMF spectrum includes the Roy G Biv that we can see, and then other light waves that people have learned to carry data on. Let's just say, that's basically what's going on. And so radio waves, for instance, they are it's light. So if we could see it in a certain way, a radio antenna would be like a sun, like blasting light so far that we can pick it up in the forest somewhere, with our AM radio wave and radio. And then the reason why AM travels really far is because the size of that light wave, carrier wave, is about 100 feet. And that 100-foot tall wave, it goes through at things, And I used to envision it as just like a wave, but it's the light around you, and that's the property of the light, that the wave, that it's 100 feet tall. You couldn't really it's not. Yeah.
It's expansive. It's quite expansive. These waves that we don't particularly see. You're specifically speaking of AM.
Imagine light that we can see, and then imagine there's more light that we can't see. I was going to do a video with a bunch of light bulbs and have green, blue, whatever, and show the colors. And then supposedly we can't see magenta, our eyes can't see magenta. So then I'd have a magenta one, and visibly it wouldn't be there. And I'd be like, but this is here. A bat could see it or something, but we can't, or a cat, or a rat. Just kidding. So then, so anyways, the AM radio waves, because they're 100 feet tall, they can go really far, and it's just like light all around us, but light that we can't see, and we can tune into it, and it can go really far because it's 100 feet. And because it's 100 feet and we're not 100 feet, we're 5 or 6 feet or whatever we are, it goes right past us. It goes through buildings, through trees, through us. It just keeps on going. We don't really get absorbed. We don't absorb it. If we're right next to the AM radio tower, working on it all day, we probably should wear some sparrow gear, or a hazmat suit or whatever they got going on, because it's a lot of intensity. So there, I'll talk about what's called the inverse square law. Cool. It applies to sound and light. And again, these radio antennas and cell towers and even your phones, they're emitting light we can't see. So light and sound has properties, and it has what's called the inverse square law, so the opposite of squared. So there's exponential that goes really crazy. It's the opposite of exponential, so it falls off exponentially. So imagine a baby crying, and if you're right next to it, it pierces your ears, but if you go in the other room, you can't even hear it. You go next door, you definitely can't hear it. So the sound, based on the distance that you got away from the source of the sound drops off exponentially as you get away. Same with light. You have a light bulb, you get away from it, it's less bright exponentially. Same exact as sound and light, it exponentially falls off. It's called the inverse square law. It's squared but inverted, upside down, the opposite of going exponentially up but exponentially down. So the further you get away from the antenna, there's way less radiation. So the house right next door to the cell tower, not too good. But if you're just a mile away, you're fine. So sorry to go on these tangents, but it's all going to make sense in the end. So FM radio waves are 10 feet tall, and they can go pretty far, but not as far as AM. And they're not impactful to humans, and it's all good. We can pick them up, and we're not getting cancer from being around our FM radio, okay? So, but they were able to get information and carry it on the freaking light waves that we can't see, that were 10 feet tall. And it's, based on bits and putting them on the waves. And, I'm not yet an engineer of that sort, but I am learning to wear very many hats. It's interesting, becoming, what we do. So, all the way down to Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi carries data, and Wi-Fi now is about 1.5 feet, 30 centimeters ish, and it oscillates So it's probably like half a foot to 2 feet, and it's like this. It's oscillating range, and it carries data on it. And I don't really like that it oscillates because it doesn't give your body the ability to get used to it. Like if it was just on one like wave, whatever size it was, then we could just like get used to it, kind of thing. And we know how far Wi-Fi goes, and if there's like a brick or a lead wall, or if you got some lead paint or whatever, or distance or whatever, it depends on how strong the Wi-Fi router is, and you can imagine that as a little ball of light, a sun or something, and intensity and distance, inverse square law, like I said. Then we get like 3G phones, and those carrier waves were probably like a couple feet or something like that. They weren't small. They weren't very small. They were pretty big, and they weren't impactful. The 3G could go pretty far. The cell tower's like way on the mountainside. So now that network has been turned off in the whole of the United States, but not in third world. So, and I just said I had that phone, and now it's gone. It's off. So now the only phones and stuff and soup that we're in is like smart meter radiation, Wi-Fi, and all that sort of stuff, and then 4G and 5G. So 4G is measured in centimeters, and 5G everyone's all upset about because it's measured in millimeters, and that's like a big deal, okay? And it's new, and the biggest reason why people are worried about it being measured in millimeters is it gets down to the size where our bodies think it's sunlight, light that we like, because that's measured in nanometers, which is near millimeters. A millimeter, to give you a reference point, is the width of a penny. The width of a penny is 1.5 millimeters. And the Verizon high band is a range of about 1 millimeter to like 8 millimeters or something, this like bandwidth that they like the FCC auctioned off them this spectrum, which is an actual like measurable bandwidth that wasn't even for sale before, and now they've sold it, and now Verizon owns this certain measure, like actual spectrum, bandwidth. Interesting, bandwidth, like how much it's measurable. So Verizon has the most impactful one. They have the high band, and then there's like mid band and low band by AT&T and all these other carriers. And so the Verizon high band, it has all their new iPhones and all this stuff working on this network to be 5G'd out, which makes it like this. The 5G carrier wave, measured in millimeters, it cannot go very far. So basically it can go like a couple blocks. In theory, they say 500 feet. And so every 500 feet, the carrier wave that is being emitted from the 5G node, it needs to find another node, aka cell tower, but the nodes are now cell phones. It's different technology. It's not like it was before. Completely different. 5G is completely different. Okay, so now your phone is trying to get everyone's signal from around you, pick it up, and then amplify it and shoot it out to the next node or cell tower, whatever it can do, giving everybody like faster stuff, because that carrier wave, because it's so small, it can carry lots of data, because it can do lots of oscillation, lots of waves per second, which is called hertz, Hertz, named after Heinrich Hertz. And Heinrich Hertz, and which is ironic because it's called Hertz and it does eventually hurt you. And Heinrich Hertz, he died in his 30s because of being exposed to so much of this, because he was checking it out and died. I think he was 36 or something. So that's something noteworthy.
The same Hertz rental too, by the way. Is
fascinating. It? Yeah. I've been looking at all these.
I believe Crow said it's the same Hertz family that owns the rental. Like it's through that same. Yeah, but go on. Sorry.
So no, and please. And so interject and I'm almost done. And so what we have now with this new network that's being introduced is carrier waves that they're carrying information on, just like how they carry information on like the AM waves and whatever, but carrier waves that are absorptive into our bodies and stuff like that. Like these waves, if they hit a tree, they absorb into it. If they hit a human, they absorb into the human. Like they need like a direct line of sight, like a sniper rifle, like it has to go to the next thing to propel it onto the next thing. And so in a really dense city, if everyone's got an iPhone or a Verizon phone or some 5G phone that's working together. And I think eventually it'll just be like nationwide federal phone thing, and it's going to be everyone has to have the federal network phone or whatever eventually, because I think eventually people will have like their digital dollar on like a phone type thing, whatever. That's dystopia, whatever. So we can hopefully not have that and create the world that we want. So the 5G, because of the size of the carrier wave, it's more absorptive, and then we get more radiation absorbing into us, and then we show symptoms like the flu symptoms and stuff. And that's what I believe is our body is shedding radiated cells in our body. So we start to detox and shed radiated cells so that we don't have them mutate in our body and be bad, cause problems. And then when you're doing that detox, then other people, if they have radiated cells inside them, they're like, oh man, I want to detox my radiated cells just like you did, and like you're detoxing these exosomes, and then that's the triggering other people. And you're like, if your household all comes down with something, I mean, they might all have a family plan on the freaking Verizon, new iPhones and stuff like that too. But I think it's all worth noting, and trust me, before I pass the mic, I'm just gonna say one thing: is everybody loves their phone. Believe me, I know that. I know everyone has their songs, their pictures, and everyone loves their phones. But we have to find a point when less is more, because we're beings of frequency. We're beings of like not technology. We're biological beings of rhythm. And if you start to analyze yourself, which is I highly encourage you to do, and everyone says like forget about the past, like analyze the past, like process your past, like get all up in yourself and realize who you are. And you're an electrical being down to your nervous system. Every cell is electrical. And so if you're got an electrical device in your pocket, you have to comprehend the impact that it could and does have on you, and especially your children and your sperm count and all sorts of stuff like that. I think the in-game agenda is like lowering the fertility rate of people, but people won't grasp it because the mainstream won't tell you what's really going on.
Thanks for checking out our free preview of the podcast. If you want to listen to the rest of this episode and many others like it, become a member at thepatlife.org.